Yeah, so how do you know about M5?
I actually discovered about M5 when I saw your advert, I think on social media, uh,
Yeah.
how I came to know of M5.
Oh, okay. All right. No, that's cool. Was that the one about the lady boss thing that you're talking about?
Yes, yes,
Oh, okay.
very first one I saw.
Okay. All right. No, that's very cool. Yeah, we sort of a property company and we do investments and so on, but we're going very much into there's just a little bit of other things about entrepreneurship and all of that as well. Which is what this whole lady boss thing is all about.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
how far has M5 come along? How long has the company been around for?
so we've been around now for just a bit over 5 years,
Mhm.
and yeah, and we do a lot of property investment, fundraising, training. We train people how to become how to invest in property. And then also now recently, which is what this whole lady boss thing is about teaching people how to really become entrepreneurs. Because I think, in this country, we definitely need that.
Oh, yes, we
And
do.
especially for women, which is why I said, no, this year I want to do a female focused event as well.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Females do somehow find themselves at the bottom of the economic food chain, and especially the younger they are, with our now really dismally low unemployment rate for youth, standing at a staggering 74%. So young females actually definitely need to acquire entrepreneurship skills,
Yeah.
especially property investment.
Because there's not, when you talk about property and entrepreneurship, there's so many more things than just um, there's so many more opportunities than just saying, okay, well, I'm going to buy a property.
Yeah,
But property in itself requires so many services and little businesses to make it successful that you can literally start a business in any one of those areas. And and you can be I like to call myself a property entrepreneur. So anything to do with property I'll do.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
That's amazing. I saw your other advert also about the student accommodation rentals and conversion of student accommodation property. I thought that was so useful. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
amazing.
no, that's and for me that I like to do that as well because I like to it's almost like giving back to students and being able to house them in proper accommodation because I've seen so many
Student
people
accommodation.
overcrowding and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's just my small way. Obviously, still making money, but just
Well, making money
just
isn't.
helping to make the situation better. Yeah.
Yes.
But Tina, tell me a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Well, my academic background is that I'm an admitted attorney of the High Court of South Africa. I matriculated at the P.F. van Ryneveld High School, which is in Kempton Park,
Okay.
um, not to be mistaken with the area in Centurion,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like
which is also called P.F. van Ryneveld.
Yeah.
But apparently, our school was named in honor of the man who was one of the first aviators in the country. And as
Oh.
we know, the largest airport in Africa is located in Kempton Park. So the late Sir Pierre van Ryneveld actually spent a lot of his time in Kempton Park. As he was based as an aviator at the then Jan Smuts Airport, which is located in Kempton Park. So that is how my school came to be named in his honor.
Oh, wow. That's actually such a cool story. I never knew that. Awesome. Wow. Okay. I wonder if the Centurion one is where he lived or something. I don't know. They
he was
also named after.
It could
Maybe.
be, yeah, it could be the Centurion one is where he was born, and the Kempton Park one is where he spent his adult years and his career years, his professional years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that is the high school I went to and matriculated from. And immediately after high school, after matric, I enrolled at university for a BCom law degree, which I managed to complete. And thereafter, I followed up with a 2-year LLB degree. I completed that as well, served articles up until when I completed my training and I qualified as a fully fledged admitted attorney. And since then, I've worked
So
professionally.
you like to study, hey? It sounds like that's like your favorite thing in life.
But that's not even all, you know, this is going to sound like a TV infomercial. Wait, there's more.
Go for it. There's more.
A couple of years later than that, I saw an opportunity which was advertised by the Swedish embassy here in South Africa. They were offering the first master's degree scholarships to African students, and they had 10 on offer. So I thought, wow, the chances are great. I applied for it, and I was one of the first 10 master's degree scholars to be awarded a full scholarship to study in Sweden. So that's where I went.
Oh, wow. Wow.
From the year
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. So yeah, that now completes my educational background. But in terms of professional background, after I completed my BCom law, I worked for a year in Centurion, which is how come I would know about Pierre van Rijn. I was selected onto the Momentum Graduate Program, and that was in 2005. And for a year, I worked at the Momentum head office, which is located, I think it's West Street in Centurion. And thereafter, I worked briefly for about a year and a half at FNB Home Loans. And when I was at FNB Home Loans, I used to work at the last end of the conveyancing chain, which is when now we just made FICA approvals for bonds to be registered in customers' accounts. And that is where I got my first exposure into the property process. Yeah. I was quite young. I was 21, 22 years old. And then I think it sort of clicked to me, especially the more I saw customers whose profile showed that they owned multiple properties. Up until when I started at FNB Home Loans, I assumed that buying property would just be to live in, for you and your children, or you and your parents, or you and your husband, your family. Yeah. So I actually learned a different side of things when I was at FNB Home Loans, when I saw that many people were actually applying for mortgage bonds, and they were buying up properties which they were keeping as investments. So yeah, that's when
But then at FNB, you had the fun part. You had the we're paying you now part. Yes. That sounds like not the beginning where it's like, sorry, you can't get that loan.
You don't qualify. No, definitely.
You had the fun part. I'd like to press that button.
That really was the fun part. Everyone loves you, and everyone sends, because we used to get incentivized for getting compliments from customers. But you got compliments so easily. Oh, Thina, you are the best. You are so professional. Thank you for the lovely message. Obviously, you were delivering good news.
Imagine that poor person that has to say, sorry, you don't qualify.
Never get a single compliment.
I hope they were incentivized in some other way, because
yeah, we would definitely hope so, because then it wouldn't be their fault.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But now, how did you end up as an attorney working for FNB like that?
It was considered actually the job requirements, like the job spec for my position, because I was technically, my position was called a compliance official. So this was a position that was specifically for someone who had a legal background.
Okay, all right.
And then when I got in the workplace, I would say maybe that is part of when the employment space in South Africa started putting barriers to entry. Because now when I joined the department at F&B, at compliance, when F&B was still located at the Colosseum building, just opposite the Carlton Center in the city center in Johannesburg. There were about 80 employees in the compliance department, and I would say 50 of them did not have a university degree or a legal background.
Yeah.
And then I also found out when I was in the job that half of my job actually didn't require legal knowledge. So I would say that was when I noticed that no, the employment landscape is well developing and changing slightly, where now certain job opportunities would be advertised as only requiring a matric, but then employers now started putting a little bit more in terms of educational qualifications as well as work experience. But the experience I gained was still invaluable because now we were taken on actually training programs. So even though they said they wanted somebody with a legal background, they offered like paralegal training, they offered phase training, the phase act, financial advisory and intermediary services act training, FICA, the Financial Intelligence Center Act, training and accreditation, as well as even, what's this big one? The NCA, the National Credit Act. So all of those training programs that we went on and exams that we wrote, they came easier to me than to my colleagues. So I had a sort of a distinct advantage,
because of that educational background. All right. So tell me a little bit more about Sweden. How was that? That must have been exciting.
It was exciting. Oh, and now that I'm speaking to you, it really is as everyone thinks. I see you also have blonde hair. Like Sweden is filled with people who are like you, beautiful people, beautiful blonde people. And they are the friendliest, most amazing people I've ever met. Beautiful, very tall. I'm a very tall woman. So for the first time in my life,
you didn't feel like you're standing out.
For the first time in my life, I felt like I was average height. It was amazing. No one ever commented or guessed, Thina, you're so tall. My height was average height in Sweden.
Wow.
So I fitted in quite well. And I also even found their daily or everyday menu to be very similar to my culture. I'm Xhosa, by the way. Okay. In Sweden, they have a very heavily meat-based menu. Swedes love meat.
Okay.
And they also drink something that you might know it as inkomazi, like fermented sour milk. That's a very big part of the Xhosa diet. I mean, if you know our late former president, Nelson Mandela.
That was just the South African thing, so they actually do it there as well.
They do it as well, and I think they consume fermented sour milk more than South Africans do.
Wow, okay.
When you walk in the supermarkets, like literally the dairy aisle, by the fridges, what you see more than milk is actually, they call it fil, F-I-L, that is sour milk in Swedish. And they have several variants of it. So I fitted in so easily. I was like, you guys eat my food.
That's very cool. So how long were you in Sweden for? 3 years?
I arrived there in August 2014. I was doing a 1-year master's degree. So I stayed for exactly a year, and we had our graduation ceremony in June 2015.
Okay. All right.
It was just for a little under a year. So it was a very lovely experience. And Sweden, unlike now that we're mentioning Sweden, and in light of this, the event, the Lady Boss event that's coming up, Sweden is one of probably, if not the most feminist nation in the world, where women's rights are really upheld and respected. And you don't see this like on paper only, like in legislation. You actually feel it when you're walking in the streets in Sweden. Women are empowered in Sweden. Women don't get like regularly disrespected in like social settings. I had friends, I still have friends who live in Sweden. In Sweden, and in terms of now the government seeking to uphold the rights of women, they also basically apply an equal standard to men. For instance, the standard period of, they call it parental leave, they don't call it maternity leave in Sweden, is actually 18 months.
What?
But now it's split equally between a man and a woman who have just had a child. And how this, so it's up to the couple to decide on how they will take their parental leave. But with most new parents, how they usually split it is that the man will continue going to work from the day the baby is born, but the woman would stay at home for the first 9 months of the baby's life, looking after the baby. And then for the second 18 months, from when the baby is like 10 months old up until 18 months old, the man then takes the latter half of the parental leave. And then he looks after the baby and he bonds with the baby at home. So what I used to see in like town squares in Sweden, and this baffled me up until when I asked about this. I was like, why is it men only who are taking care of babies? Because you see only men with strollers in public in Sweden. That was so amazing. It was amazing.
And I think that must be a wonderful experience for a dad as well, you know, being able to take that time with his kids.
Yes.
Because for me as well, when you know, I've always been the one that's been working and all that, but in South Africa, you know, we have our maternity leave and that's great. But then for my third child, at that point, my husband wasn't, he got retrenched a little bit before that, so he wasn't working at that point in time. And I mean, he then, when I went back to work with my daughter, he's the one that raised her, right? Because he was alone with her until she went to school, looking after her during the day. And I mean, he absolutely loved it. He said there's nothing in the world that he would exchange that time for, you know? So that was really, really amazing. And it's nice to have someone in the house that can support you with that, because I'm never going to be the stay-at-home person. I think I will go nuts. So he's more the homely person. Me, I like to be out and about and everywhere. But yeah, I mean, that did work out really well as well. So then tell me now, so you were in Sweden, then you came back, you went to F&B, and then what?
When I came back from Sweden, I applied for work, because when I left for Sweden, I was working for SARS, now the Revenue Authority. I worked in the Customs Division in Alberton.
Okay.
I was working as a regional legal advisor. And perhaps maybe I should have applied for a sabbatical rather than resigning, but I resigned on obtaining the opportunity to study overseas. And I struggled for a bit when I returned to South Africa. I don't know, perhaps if my overseas qualification wasn't as welcomed as I had imagined it would be in the employment space. But I had sort of, when I was in Sweden, I had toyed with the idea, because one of the things I noticed, besides women being empowered and women being far safer, like 1,000 times safer than here in South Africa, what I noticed in Sweden and other European countries I traveled to was how well the government worked over there. So while I was in Sweden studying for my master's degree, the thought came to me that, you know what, I should try and enter into the political arena so that I can influence and drive change in South Africa. Okay. And so when I returned to South Africa, I was going for job interviews within the legal space, but then I decided to also enter into politics. And actually, up until now, I've been working as a municipal councillor. I started from when I returned in July 2015 when I entered the political fray. However, politics in South Africa is so complicated. It's definitely not like first world countries like Sweden, where integrity is paramount. I mean, I'm sure you would know some of the sort of political big stories of South Africa and how even when it's been proven that a leader has committed wrong, they clench their jaw and they state, I am staying in this position. I would rather destroy the whole country. I mean, we saw what happened in July this year with the protests and the rioting. In Europe, usually the slightest scandal, if a prime minister has been found to have cheated on his wife, as soon as that is exposed, he resigns from his job the next day. We don't have
imagine that in South Africa. We would be going through councillors and like
so many. Like we would go through like 20 presidents in 2 years.
Different one every month.
That's true.
I mustn't generalize. Sorry for anybody watching this. It's very, very like, serious about your relations. That's okay. So you're a counsellor. Where are you a counsellor at?
In one of the 8 metros of the country, here in Gauteng, in the city of Ekurhuleni, basically where I live.
Okay, well, that's awesome. So what are the sort of the biggest challenges you find being a counsellor? I think there's a lot, okay? So we don't have 6 hours, so give me the top 2.
The top 2 would be, number 1, just being female in a male-dominated space, because politics is male-dominated in South Africa.
Yeah, that's also what I wanted to ask now. So, I mean, I don't, I'm going to confess now, I don't know that many counsellors. So, and I mean, we kind of just see the premiers and the top leadership, really.
Yes.
That's sort of what you see. So I don't really have a view of the actual councillors on a municipal level. How many of those are actually females?
I would say in my caucus, I'm not going to go into specifics about which political party I'm in, but in our political party, we have a total of 76 councillors. But guess the proportion of females to males. The proportion of females is 23.
Yeah. So out of the 74, there's 23 females.
There's 23 females, which means there is now 53 males, almost more than double the number of females. And that is the usual proportion in terms of now gender balancing in those leadership circles.
Do you find that being a woman in that sort of position, that your priorities are different? Because obviously when there's so much to do, I think in South Africa, in every council, and you kind of have to choose what's going to get done, what am I going to support, where am I going to focus? Do you find that sometimes there's a bit of a difference in what women would focus on versus men, or do you think it's just to get the basics in and everybody focuses sort of on the same thing?
I think a lot of influence comes from now the executive leadership of each political party, as well as the executive leadership of the council as a whole, which would then be the political party that got the most votes. So now it doesn't really differ. The interests don't really differ according to gender. It always differs according to the priorities for the political party as well as the council. So it's more or less equal. There isn't that much difference between males and females.
Cool. So I can still vote for a woman. It's still going to be everything the same.
Yes, things will probably still get done the same. But yeah, politics is a very strange thing. I guess that's why they say, especially when having conversation that is intended to be maybe an icebreaker with strangers, there are 3 topics you should avoid discussing politics, religion, and sex.
True.
The
And here we
reason-
are meeting and the thing we're discussing politics. But okay, we won't go too deep into that.
Oh, we won't go too deep, definitely. But there's a reason why people came up with that, because now politics is just viewed differently. So when I mentioned that the number one challenge one would face would be being female in a male-dominated space, it's just the societal expectations and values. You get certain members of the public who just hold a certain belief because of their own cultural background. Maybe some people might believe, no, a man will be able to get this done easier, whereas it actually doesn't require physical or muscular strength.
Yeah.
So you come across those perceptions. So you constantly hit against them, and you have to work that much harder when you are a female in order to dispel those. So that doesn't even come from now internally in the political party or the council. It just comes now from public perception.
Yes,
The
yes.
perceptions, they play a lot of role. But the second, because I didn't give you the second biggest challenge, I think the second biggest challenge is one that affects leadership and politics, even like now on a national scale, and that is misappropriation of money and funds and budgets. Things just, it gets so frustrating when you are a political leader and you've got your heart in the right place, but now you are frustrated by red tape and budgets and you can't get things done.
Yeah.
And when those that easily get those budgets and finances, they decide to misdirect them.
Hey, yeah.
They don't quite do what was intended. I'm not sure if you've heard recently of the scandal that was exposed in the Eastern Cape, where a stadium costing 50 million rand was built, but it looks like a primary school track field with a small little pavilion.
Yeah. I saw that. I thought it's obviously quite shocking, but I thought that was really funny, because even school fields have better stadiums.
Oh, they are. I've seen school fields that look 10 times better, and that probably didn't cost more than 250,000
And then
rand.
there's this meme going around. I don't know if you saw that one. Which three people standing on like a wooden plank over a river, not a big river, just a stream, and people were walking over that, and they say that's the 15 million rand bridge that was built.
I didn't see that one, but I've seen a lot of spin-offs from that 15 million rand stadium, because it really is not a 15 million rand stadium.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But maybe it's obviously not applicable necessarily in this case, but I also find that contractors, just because you're a woman, they think they can come up with any price that they want to, and you wouldn't know better. And so I always have I'll talk about it, I'll negotiate it, and I'm in any case not the person always on the ground in terms of the details on that. So I always have like a scapegoat. I'm like, well, you see, I have this friend, he's a builder, and he says this and that.
Yeah.
You must just be a little bit clever to get past.
Yeah, so you must come up with survival mechanisms to beat them at their own game.
Yeah, exactly.
So it would be exactly the same experience we normally get from mechanics as women.
Yeah. With your car and all that stuff. Yeah, true.
Yes.
But I must be honest, I know nothing about cars, so they can probably swindle me about that. Luckily, the husband knows a lot about that, so he deals with that stuff. So Thina, tell me your top 2-3 proudest achievements.
My top 2 or top 3 proudest achievements. I think number 1, my educational qualifications, as I've said so far. Number 2, managing to actually enter the tough political space in South Africa, which a lot of people aspire to but don't quite achieve. And number 3, it's my property investments, which I feel I am creating a legacy, not only for myself, but also for my future children. I don't have children as yet, but I'm planning on having children in the future. And I feel like I'm building a legacy for them. Can perhaps
So you
show
were
them
holding out for me. You were holding out on me about your property stuff. Why? Why are you holding out on me? Tell me.
No, I have quite an interesting background in terms of property investment. As I said in my introductory video that I submitted to M5, my special place and niche in property investment particularly is development property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so development property is where I feel I have found
That's a difficult one, so well done.
I'm not the developer, I'm just a buyer and investor, that's far.
Still.
Yes. I do have aspirations of actually being a micro developer because I see that also like flourishing. There are a couple of new entrants who are flourishing in that area. And I think I can learn quite a lot from you as well, Rita, which is why I brought up the student accommodation division or side of things in the business that M5 is offering, because I feel like perhaps that's a very good start to someone being a micro developer, buying property and then developing it further to make it suitable for rental by students. But I would say so far I own 3 properties currently, which I bought from developments. The first one I bought was 3 years ago in 2018. And this year I've actually managed to buy 2. And 2 will be actually paying themselves. Because I'm renting out the one that I bought in 2018, and I have a very good and stable tenant staying there. And the one that I bought in June this year, that is the one I'm now residing in. And the one I bought in February, which is an apartment, a small apartment, but basically a hotel suite-sized apartment. It's located in a mixed residential and also business development located in Sandton. So it will be managed professionally for me by a rental company that's affiliated to the developer. I would say the reason why I have found or I view development property to be a special niche for me is just the ease of process, how easy it is to buy into development property. All the 3 properties that I've mentioned, they are priced at 1 million rand and above. I bought the studio apartment hotel in Sandton for 1,015,000 rand. The second property that I bought in June, which is a 4-bedroom apartment, I bought that for 1,149,000 rand. And the 3-bed double garage simplex that I bought 3 years ago, I bought it for 1,030 for 1,030,000 rand. But I didn't necessarily have to pay any deposit or costs upfront. When I bought 3 years ago, the townhouse 3 years ago, I only had to pay a securing deposit of 5,000 rand. But as soon as the property was registered in my name, that 5,000 rands was refunded to me in full. I didn't have to pay. I was given a 100% bond by the bank financing to buy the property. I didn't have to pay attorney fees, conveyancing, transfer costs, etc.
The developer included all of that in the price.
The developer included all of that. So that's why I really, really love development property. I mean, if you look at even just the lowest price of my 3 development properties, the one of 1,015,000, if you work out the transfer costs on that, it would be in the region of about 60 or 70,000. So I feel like it's actually quite a good saving. It's an amazing incentive for someone who is looking to start out in developing property.
Yeah, and I think also for new builds like that, the nice part about it is that, like you say, it's easy because the developers, what they would do is they'll go when they've just finished maybe a show house or something like that, they actually get the banks out to come and do valuations on the units before they even sell it. So the bank will come out, they'll put a value on it. So your property is already pre-approved for a bond. Now it's just up to your finance, so you just hand in your documents, they approve it. They don't even send someone else to go and look at the property because they have it pre-approved on evaluation. So it's very easy. And I mean, I also, my first 3 properties that I bought were also from it with new builds. I think partly because I lived in them and it's just so nice moving into something that nobody else ever moved into. So that was quite cool. But these days I like secondhand stuff because I can get them cheaper. So like property, like with most things in life, if it's secondhand, you can negotiate and get them cheaper.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So that is my story so far. In the past, I actually tried buying property when I was 23 years old. It didn't quite work out, but not due to my fault. It was because the developer I don't know whether they went bankrupt, but they delayed the registration of the property by about 5 years. They experienced financial difficulty.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the pitfalls that then someone looking to invest in development property must look out for. There are certain developers that are now more well-known, especially nationally, and that you would know that if you buy into these, then you won't encounter obstacles like that.
No matter how good those developers are, it will be late. Don't think you're going to move in when you're going to move in. Just plan, make a plan. Don't rely on that date.
That is true. I've also experienced it.
Not their fault, It's like there's so many moving parts in a development. You can't control each and everything. So there's always delays. And developers like to give you earlier dates and then something happens.
No, that's true. As you're saying, there's lots of variables involved. It could be registration with the municipality or obtaining certification for their electrical connections. It could be getting servicing for water connections. It could be quite a lot of things that may, in most instances, actually be beyond the control of the developer. Yeah.
So tell me, Thina, sort of to close off, tell me what is sort of the one piece of advice you will give women that are in a very male-dominated world to survive in that type of situation? What's that one piece of advice you could give them?
I would advise them to actually put money aside, have an emergency fund, and also get into the property development, not development, but the property investment space. It doesn't have to be new property. It doesn't have to be development property. It could be secondhand property. Property is actually, it's been proven time and time again to be the world's most safest and most secure investment. And the earlier you start, the better. Like I said, I could have learned so much about investing, about managing a property, had the developer that I was trying, whose development I was trying to buy into, had they managed to deliver when I was 23 years old. There's so much that I could have learned. So even before people start families, you don't have to wait as a woman until you are married. Don't wait for a man. Actually, a man must find you already owning your own assets, so that
don't get married in community of property. Whatever you do, don't.
Yeah,
out of
exactly.
community of property. Not
Yes.
just if you have lots of assets, but even later in life, if you want to grow on your property portfolio, it works better to be out of community of property. Otherwise, it can get very complicated.
Yeah, otherwise you get what's the word? You'll be encumbered for the rest of your life. Now you need your husband's consent for everything. And maybe you never even knew what in community of property as a marital property regime means. And then you find that now when you need to sell your property, you can't sell your property because someone is withholding their consent. So yeah, for young women, they just need to learn to acquire assets, appreciating assets, of which property is the world's most safest appreciating assets. Acquire your own assets very early on in life, even before you meet the love of your life and your husband. And definitely, as Peter
property
said,
become the love of your life.
it's the love of your life because it is the love of our lives.
Yay! Thina, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I had such an awesome chat.
Thank you so much. This was lovely. This was such a lovely chat.
So is there a ward number or something that you can give me if people are going to vote on the 1st of November to vote for you? Or is it not now?
No, not at the moment. I'm not a ward candidate because you can
okay.
either be a ward candidate or a PR candidate.
Oh, okay. So you're not a ward. Okay. So sorry. I was going to tell people to vote for you, but vote for her next time.